Hey there folks, and welcome back to Footy Today, where we bring you the latest and greatest news in the world of football. Before we begin, remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as it does really help us out a lot. Now let's get into it. Despite Premier League clubs unanimously voting to bring in a spending cap as part of their new financial rules, the current constraints, profit and sustainability rules or PSR will remain in place for the 2024-25 campaign. It has sparked fear in the majority of clubs in England's top flight after a historic 2023-24 season with two clubs, Everton and Nottingham Forest, handed points deductions. This means Premier League clubs are expected to act cautiously in the transfer market again, following an uncharacteristically quiet January transfer window where a total of £96.2 million was spent across the league, the lowest spend in 3 years during the winter window. In this video we'll look at 8 Premier League clubs with the highest risk of breaching PSR, which could lead to them getting points deducted. The 2024 summer transfer window could see more academy products sold to help Premier League clubs, as it provides them with pure profit and is by far the best way of reducing the threat of any punishment from the authorities. PSR has by no means been popular, though top-flight clubs will have to wait until the 2025-26 campaign for the new rules to be put in place. So who are these 8 clubs? Well, it's Everton, Leicester, Aston Villa, Manchester City, Nottingham Forest, Newcastle United, Arsenal and Chelsea. Let's start with Everton. The Toffees are among the clubs that could breach PSR during the 2024-25 season. The club fell foul of the rules in the 2023-24 campaign. In doing so, they were originally docked 10 points, the heaviest points deduction in Premier League history. Following a successful appeal, the club were able to reduce the deduction to 6 points. With new stadium construction well underway and scheduled to be completed in time for the opening game of the 2025-26 campaign, Everton have been spending heavily across the entire club. There is uncertainty over their proposed takeover of 777 Partners. The consortium called upon finance engagement experts in May 2024, which cast further doubt on their ability to complete the takeover of the club. Everton sold Anthony Gordon to Newcastle United in January 2023, which helped them a great deal. The academy product gave the club pure profit and eased PSR worries to a degree. However, their spending has been consistently high, bringing in players for inflated prices and large wages. An independent commission found that Everton had exceeded permitted losses by £19.5 million over an assessment period which ended with the 2021-22 campaign. Whether the Toffees learn from their mistakes in the future remains to be seen. However, with uncertainty continuing to loom over the proposed takeover, the future remains uncertain. Leicester City. In March 2024, Leicester City were charged by the Premier League for an alleged breach of PSR, which has increased their fears of starting their return to England's top flight with a points deduction. The Foxes allegedly failed to submit their audited financial accounts to the Premier League for the 2022-23 campaign. Following the charges, Leicester released a strong statement expressing their disappointment over the decision and vowed to engage constructively with the Premier League to seek a favourable outcome for the club. The club's relegation to the Championship during the 2022-23 season resulted in the sale of some of their prized assets, such as James Maddison and Harvey Barnes. Those departures, particularly Barnes' move to Newcastle United, did help ease PSR fears, as it provided the club with pure profit. As they have now been promoted back into the Premier League, the club are likely to spend heavily in a bid to ensure they avoid relegation. There is hope within the club that should a points deduction be issued, it will not be to the same extent as Everton's 10 points deduction. The Foxes await a decision from the Premier League and will know of their fate before the opening game of their return to the top flight. Aston Villa. Villa will be playing Champions League football next season, after an impressive 4th-placed finish. The demands of European football are harsh, and Villa have coped well being in the Europa Conference League. However, Villa have spent heavily getting to where they are, and the club were helped by the sale of Jack Grealish to Manchester City, a transfer that allowed the club to rebuild. However, the club are going to have to sell players to appease the financial constraints. Jacob Ramsey, an academy product, is a player who has been the subject of interest from other clubs, and with PSR becoming a real issue for Premier League clubs, selling another academy product would help boost Villa's transfer budget as they look to build a team strong enough to compete in the Champions League. While the majority of Premier League clubs are becoming cautious in the transfer market to stave off PSR fears, Villa do have saleable assets on their books that will help them avoid any punishments from the authorities. Manchester City. City are currently embroiled in 115 alleged breaches of financial fair play. A trial date has been set by the Premier League for some time in autumn 2024, with the exact date to remain out of the public domain along with any other details of the trial. A verdict is expected in the summer of 2025. The ongoing uncertainty of what, if any, punishment the club receives has been incredibly troubling for the club. Looking at the respective point deductions handed to Everton and Nottingham Forest, suggestions are that City's punishment will be a significant one. Pep Guardiola's side have continued to spend heavily while dominating the Premier League. There has been criticism that the investigation into Manchester City's alleged breaches has taken too long, not just from their rivals but also the club themselves. If they are found not guilty, it will come as a huge relief to the club and rubber stamp their name as one of the greatest sides in Premier League history. Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest have already fallen foul of PSR, having been deducted 4 points, and should their current level of spending continue, it will not bode well for the club. Forest have been one of the busiest clubs in the Premier League when it comes to incoming transfers since their return to the top flight in the 2022-23 season. A total of 22 players arrived at the City ground in the summer window of 2022, followed by a further 7 in January 2023. Forest were by no means finished, and the summer of 2023 saw 13 players arrive ahead of their second season in the Premier League. The sale of Brennan Johnson has helped the club stave off further punishment from the Premier League concerning PSR. However, it is thought there will be several players leaving the club in the 2024 summer window, with a host of clubs interested in Morgan Gibbs-White. Forest are well aware that there may have to be surprise departures, but it will allow the club to rebuild and avoid further points deductions heading into the 2024-25 season. Newcastle United. Newcastle have spent heavily since the Saudi-backed public investment fund, PCP Partners and the Reuben brothers bought the club in October 2021, more out of necessity, with the new owners acquiring a club from Mike Ashley that was in disarray, an aging squad that had little investment and on the brink of relegation. Thankfully for Newcastle United supporters, the club appointed a manager in Eddie Howe who has overseen an incredible turnaround, improving the players who were already at the club and bringing in quality players such as Bruno Guimaraes, Kieran Trippier and Alexander Isak. Howe managed to save the club from relegation and guided the club to a top 4 finish in his first season. However, Newcastle had very few saleable assets when they were taken over. Since then the club have had to tread very carefully to stave off PSR concerns. The sale of Alan St. Maximin in the 2023 summer window helped ease those concerns slightly, but by no means considerably. Guimaraes extended his contract with them until 2028. However, the new contract has a £100 million release clause included, which will leave the club on edge heading into the summer window. Newcastle do not necessarily have to sell a big star to comply with PSR, so the likes of Guimaraes, Isak and Sven Botman could remain on Tyneside. However, the club are aware that there will have to be departures. Players such as Callum Wilson, Sean Longstaff and Miguel Almiron are among those who could leave the club instead of one of their prized assets. Arsenal's improvement under Mikel Arteta has seen the Gunners return as Premier League title challengers once more. That improvement has come at a literal cost, with the club spending heavily since Arteta's arrival at the Emirates Stadium in 2019. Their expensive 2023 summer recruitments of Declan Rice and Kai Havertz resulted in a quiet winter window for the club as PSR fears started to become a reality. It is thought that Arsenal will look to move on some academy products such as Eddie Nketiah and Emile Smith-Rowe, both of whom will have plenty of suitors to help abide by the financial rules set by the Premier League. Arsenal will undoubtedly want to invest further in the summer window, with a striker high on the agenda. Selling the likes of Smith-Rowe and Nketiah will allow the club to be less cautious in the transfer market and could help push Arsenal to the Premier League title during next season. And finally, Chelsea. Chelsea have been the biggest spenders in the Premier League since Todd Boehly bought the club in 2022. During that time, the club have spent over £1 billion on players. The club have come under scrutiny for finding loopholes in the PSR constraints, such as using amortization to their advantage and spreading the cost of a player over long contracts. Premier League clubs voted in favour of transfer fees being spread over a maximum of 5 years following Chelsea's continued spending. Chelsea have paid £100 million or more for a single player on 3 occasions since the 21-22 season. Romelu Lukaku, Enzo Fernandez and Moses Caicedo arrived at Stamford Bridge for over £100 million. Due to their eye-watering spending, Chelsea will need to sell players in the 2024 summer window or face punishment from the Premier League. Conor Gallagher has attracted interest from various clubs. Although it would be a reluctant sale, it would make the most business sense for Chelsea. The club would receive pure profit on the sale of Gallagher, much like they did for Mason Mount when he moved to Manchester United. The summer 2024 window will be an intriguing one for Chelsea, with more of a focus on outgoings to allow them to spend on incoming transfers. So what do you guys think? Are the PSR rules too harsh and will it make these teams less competitive? Or is it good that they have to follow these rules so that the league can stay competitive? Leave your comments below and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.